Hello everyone, you are welcome to the part 3 of building REST API using the standard Go library. If you have not seen the part 1 and part 2, I'll leave a link below in the comment section so that you can follow along with this tutorial. And without further ado, let's get right into it. In this part 3, we will build the success and error response. We will create a password util for hashing and comparing a password. Then we'll create our JWT, and at the end we will sign up a new user. So let's start with the success and the error response. So I'll go to my internal folder and create another one called utils. Then in the utils, I'll create a success response.go. Then we bring in our package, do package utils. Then we can create a struct success response. This is going to be a struct. So struct are just used for holding the shape of your data. Think of it like your object. Then we'll have a message to be of data type string. Then we can serialize this. Then we call this message in lowercase. I think I have to here. Let me remove the second one. Then the data can be an interface. Then we have our JSON. Then do data, and this can be optional, so we can write the omit if empty. And you can see my language server is saying interface can be replaced with any, so we can either use any or interface. So, but let's stick to our interface. I'll do U to undo. Then let's write the function. I'll write function respond with success, or you can call it a success response, whichever one you like. Then we can bring in our http.response writer. We'll need this. Then we'll need our code, which is going to be our status code. Code int message is going to be of type string, and data, which can be any or interface like so. Then we can write our writer.header. Then we can set it to content type. So this is going to be application JSON, like so. Then we can write the header. So write header sends an HTTP response header with the provided source code. So where you can return your 400, your 200, 201, and so on. So write header. Then we can pass in the code coming from the parameter. We can do JSON.new encoder. Then we pass in the response writer here. Then we can encode this. Then we can pass in our success response struct, and this is going to have message, like we declared here. Message is going to be of the parameter message coming from this parameter, and if data is present, it will be this data. So we are done with the success response. So let's create the error response. You can either create a new file for the error response, but I like to keep my success and error response here. So I'll create a new type called error response. It's going to be a structure. Then we open. This is going to have a message of type string. Then we can serialize by typing JSON.message, like so. And for the function, func can do respond with error. It's going to be similar to respond with success. So I'll pass http.response-writer. Then we can pass our code. Then let's pass a message of type string, like so. Then we can borrow from here, copy this and come down here and paste, like so. So this is going to be message or error response. Then we have message and data is not. So we have the respond with success and respond with error. So if you go to our readme, so we've created success and response. The next thing to do is to create the password util for hashing or comparing our password. So let's create another file called password util.go, like so. Then we begin our package utils. Then we can create a function for it, function hash password, and this is going to take in a string as a parameter, string. Then it will return two things, the string and error, if any. Then let's create a variable called hash password, and we have the error return. We declare a variable, and in case of error we can undo that. Then we can say bcrypt. So bcrypt is a popular package used in so many programming languages like Java, your TypeScript, Node, and whatnot. So we're using the same bcrypt here. So we have the generate password here, and we can pass in a byte. Then this will be our password. Then we need the bcrypt.default cost. They are coming from the JavaScript and Node background. This is where you pass your bcrypt.hash, then you pass your password against the salt. So see this as the salt. Then after hashing our password, we can handle the error. If error does not equal to nil, then we can say log.print. We have println, then we can say error hashing password, like so. Then we can return empty, that is no data, then error. If there's no error, then we can return a string dot hashed password, like so, and the error in this case will be nil. So this is how we can hash our password. Quickly, let's go over the compare password function. It's going to take in the stored password coming from the DB and the provided password coming from your client, which can be your Postman, your mobile app, and whatnot. And these are going to be string. And this will return a boolean since we are comparing two values. So the password in your DB and the provided password coming from your client. Then we can undo the error. We can say bcrypt dot compare password and hash, like so. Then we can also take byte. Then we're taking the stored password against a byte. You can take the byte of the provided password, like so. Then we can return error equals to nil. And if you're wondering why we are using byte as opposed to using string, it's because they generate from password, and also the compare hash and password require that we pass the byte as opposed to passing the raw string. So let's fix this error by bringing in our bcrypt. I'll save my files, let me save all, then open my terminal, stop this, and do go mod tidy. So we have this result. We have go found and maybe green here. Found go lang blah 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 crypto. So let's see if the error is gone. Let's see bcrypt, and the error should be gone. Yeah. So again, if I go back to my readme, we've done success, error response, password UT for hashing and comparing. The next one is JWT. So we can create another file here. So we call it jwt.go. Then we can bring in our package details. Then we can, let's create another struct called claims. Then we can pass our user ID. This is going to be int 64, or better still, you can use just your int instead of int 64, which will default it to this int 64. So I can do JSON, then user underscore ID, then username. It's going to be a string. Then this is going to be username in lowercase. Then lastly, we can do JWT dot standard claims. So we have our custom fields here called user ID and username, and the standard claim will give us something like the issued at, the issuer, the audience, and whatnot. So let's continue, and we create a function to generate JWT. Then we can pass in the user ID, int64, the username, of course, which is going to be a string, the secret key, again will be a byte, and this will return string, that is the token, and the error, if any. So let's construct our claim, that is the payload that we want to tokenize. So we can call it claims equals to the claim struct, the user ID should be equals to the user ID from this parameter, then the username should be equals to the username coming from the parameter, then the standard claims coming from the JWT. So we can do JWT dot standard claim, can I spell claim, then we can pass in the expires at, then we can use our time dot now, then we can add 24. So let's give it a full day, time dot r Unix. Then we need our trailing comma. So let's fix this error by adding our trailing comma again. Then let's add issuer. So on the issuer, I can just pass my name here. Then we need the trailing comma. In production, you can pass the name of the project or name of the company here, as you wish. So let's fix all these errors. There's one here. I'll close this. So instead of bringing in these two packages, we can just remove it and bring in github.com/dg, the name of the author, RIJVA, then JWT-go. So let's use this again. I'll run commot ID, then it's found and the error is gone. So let's continue. So we have our claims already. Let's see how we can create a token out of this claim. Then we can do token equals to JWT dot new. Do you have new here? New with claims. Yes. New with claims. Then we can pass our JWT dot signing method. Signing method. So let's look for SHA-256. Then we can pass it against the claim. Then at the end, lastly, we can return token dot signed. I believe it's the signed string. Yes. Then we can pass in our secret key. Secret key. So let's look at this error. We have undefined JWT signing method. What is the error? Let's see. Sign method. Okay, and the error is gone. And let's go back to our readme. And the last thing to do here is to create a user. So I'll go to the handlers. So let's create a new handler called user.go. Then we can bring in the package called handler and let's create a function. Now lastly, we created this else handler, so we will stick to this format where we are passing the handler as a receiver function. So I'll go back to my user again. Then we can create passing the else. We passing the handler, which is going to be a pointer, and we can call this create user handler. And this is going to return http.handlerfunc, and this return your func, the response writer and the request, like so. And then we can now create a context. So create a context. Contexts are used basically for carrying out deadlines, cancellations, and whatnot in Golang. So if you want to create a scoped variable that is just peculiar to this create user handler, you can create a context to handle it. And like I said, it's used for handling deadline, timeouts, and cancellation and whatnot. So we can create a CTS equals to request dot context. So the next thing is to create our DTO. I'll call it DTO or user request. User request. Can do DTO. Then we can do variable request equals to, let's create a DTO. I'll create another folder called DTO or DTOs. You can do request.go. Then let's create that quickly. DTOs. Then create a struct. Then we can do create user request. It's going to be a struct. Then we have the username. Give me a string, just saying we call it username, close this. We have email, JSON, email. Then lastly we have a password, string JSON. Then we can pass a password. So creating DTO for your request and response helps us to avoid overfetching and underfetching. So if you want to hide certain fields from your struct, you can remap your DTO, which is your data transfer object, to your actual entity. So I'll go back to this guy. You can say our request. So let's call it DTOs dot create user request. Yes. Then we can handle the error. If error equals to JSON, then we have JSON.new encoder. Again, if you want to read more, you can go into the definition. New encoder returns a new encoder that writes to the response writer. This W coming from the response. So we want to pass in our R. So we can do a request coming from this object. So we have different methods. We have a request.body, .close, .header, and whatnot. So .body, then the code. Then we can take in the pointer of the request. And if error does not equal to nil, then we can now use our error response coming from this. I think we should rename this to response. Let's call it responses. .go. Since we have both the error and success here, so we can add use dot error dot respond with error, like so. So it's going to take in the writer, response writer, the code, the message. So we can pass in the response writer, and the code will come from http dot. You can do it a bad request, then the message invalid request period. By the way, this should be the coder. So new decoder. So let's give a bit of a context to what we have here so far. So we have explained the context which handle the timeouts and cancellations, and this basically tells, so this will take the raw request body coming from the request and pass it into this create request struct. That is, just take it from whatever is coming from the client and just pass it into this create request struct. Now, the next thing to do is to query our database for the user. So we need to get if that user exists in our database. In our last lesson, we created this queries using SQL generate, where we have different predefined functions or method for us. For example, we have this create blog that will take in this params, title, content, user ID, and whatnot, and can also create a user. This is the create user function. So we will need to pass in the queries, these pointer queries coming from here into our handler. So let's undo that. In the core handler, do we have our queries? No. So we first declare our DB instance. We call it DB coming from a pointer of SQL.db, and our query store that we created coming from queries then from the store that we generated in the part 2 of this lesson dot queries. So we have the DB instance and the queries from the store. In essence, what we did is to pass the queries so that we can query DB using the H here. So if I type H, I should have the queries coming from the store, and if you want to use the DB instance directly, you can use this, but let's just use the queries to create a new user. So h.queries.create, you should have create user here, and create user is expecting this context that we created and argument coming from the create user params that was created for us by the CQC. So let's pass in our context, ctx context, then the argument will now be store.create user params, like so. And the create user params, we're taking a number of things. Number one, we have the username, right? Username, then this will be coming from our struct that we our custom struct dot username, like so. Then our email will come from our request.email. Then our password will come from the request.password, but because we don't want to store the plain text password, we have to call the hash function here. So let's do that. So I'll do hashed password. Then this one return, we have an error. If error occurs, coming from our utils dot created the hash password earlier, then we can pass in our password from our request dot password, like so. Then if error does not equal to nil, you can undo that. Then we can do utils dot respond with error, then http dot, let's do internal server error, can pass a message of error while hashing password, like so. Let's not forget to return, and likewise here too, we can return here to passing my return. Then we can pass in the hash password here, hash password. Then let's return something back. Let's undo the error in case of any error here. So we don't want the data, just the error. And we can so this should not have the left hand side, okay. So we can do if error again does not equal to nil, and do error, let's borrow it from here, copy, then come here, then we paste, and for this error we can do G error creating user, like so. So the next thing to just to return this user record. So I can do utils dot success response, or respond with success, takes in the writer, then the code. We can do http dot status, it should be true one, created, then the message is user created, and the last one you can just pass back the hash password. No, not the hash password, let's just return the request dot username, as data. So we've created the create user function here. We don't need this OS for now. Let me remove this. Then we can call it just like we did for the else. So we call it in our, close this in our route. Let's create a new one called user use route dot go. So let's set up the user route. Come here, package route. Then we can do func setup user route. Then we can pass in our mux like we did in the last lesson. http dot serve mux. Then we can do undo. Then we can do handler. Then handlers dot undo. So then we can call this guy user mux equals to http dot new serve mux. Then you can create a post request user mux. I think there's an error somewhere. Go it's supposed to be handler. I'm missing here. Then we need to close this and okay. So user mux dot undo func. I can't type today. Undo func. Then this will take in a post request. Post. Then we can call this register. Then let's do undo handler dot, you have our create user handler like so. So we don't need this. Okay, I think we are good. So let's go to the core setup route. Then we can bring in our setup route. So let's copy this, or let's create a new one. Can you also bring this guy in by setup user routes. Then it takes in mux and handler. So let's test our app. But before we test, let me change this to, let me add this prefix to it. We have user / register. Let's look through again. I think we are in a better place to test now, but let me see if we are missing anything. Request core handler. Yes, this. So let's return the instance of DB if we use it in the future. So I'll pass in my DB, then taking SQL.db, then the queries going from store.queries. Then we can return this DB. We'll use this for our transaction, this DB queries for our transaction. That's why I am creating it now. Then our queries for queries like so. Let's see what other thing are we missing. We have our route, new handlers. So we have this error here, not enough arguments. So let's pass in this guy in our main.go. So let's create our queries here so that we can pass it equals to store.new db new. We're going to pass in the db. Then let's pass in our db config, db, then our queries, and the errors should be gone. Yeah, so let's see if our app is still running. Go run me.go. Our app is still running. Let's see this user route, post user route, register. So let's give this a whirl. I'll open my terminal. Let's open another window, and I'll paste this call command here. We have 44 page not found. Okay, let's go back to our code. Let's connect to the mux directly. I'll come here, change to mux, then restart my app. The app is running. So let's close this, go back to the window again. Let's just to be sure, I'll use Mimi, then I'll use Mimi at c.c. Then we have user created and data is Mimi, just like we passed in the function. So if we go back to this function, I'll go to my definition. Then at the end we said, okay, write to the response writer, then pass a 201 response code, the user created and the username. So this is what we have here, the message created and the data is the username. So we've come to the end of this lesson 3, and in the next lesson we'll be using the JWT to tokenize our payloads, and also would create the login endpoint so that we can log in and compare our password as stored in the database. If you enjoyed this lecture, please do well to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.